be often talked about as much. And I think it's really important to note that the purpose of this content is purely educational and conversational. Big thing that I see is that when clients and women are seeking out help from a psychologist, the waitlist can be 6 months long. So with that sort of a thing, I want to be able to bridge that gap today and hopefully provide a little bit of awareness and comfort and a bit of a digital hug for you today. And so with that, I've created some slides because that's just what I'm doing now. And what we will do is we will share through, and hopefully you can see my screen, because you guys know that working on this and sharing the screen, I have still been working on trying to see what I can see, but I think I can see now. So I got a new laptop. And the reason why I got a new laptop was because I was having issues technologically with my clients and with things like this. So we're going to get down to business, and I want to start with binge eating and understanding a little bit more of the biology of binge eating. So this is something that when it comes to binge eating, I like to see it as a big sort of big lever, basically, of assistance that helps to regulate our nervous system. Great start to the workshop. So coming into binge eating, one thing is that is often misunderstood, and when you were in the cave, when you were in the pits of that coming out of a binge and realizing what you've just done and feeling that shame and that guilt and that disappointment, it's often thought of that you have a lack of willpower and a lack of discipline, a lack of a grip or control in your life. And in reality, I like to see it as if you have a big electric switchboard. So imagine you visualize, close your eyes if you can for the moment. You have a big switchboard and it's got all of these small little nodules on it that you can turn on, like similar to the house, how you've got different rooms with different electricity that you can turn on and off. And you've got all these little nodules. You've got meditate, go for a walk, do some breath work, do some stretching, journal, write 5 things you're grateful for. You've got all these little nodules that help to move the needle when it comes to grounding you and regulating you back into your body and giving you that sort of that sense of safety and security when you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and stressed and you need something to quash that gaping hole that has just appeared from that overwhelm from an energetic perspective. Food is the big red fat one in the middle, the big red lever that when you pull it down, it can do the quickest amount of grounding, bring you back into your body, relieving that overwhelm, relieving that stress, that taste of the food, that signal that you are safe, you are here, you are present, can be really felt quite quickly with food. Whereas when we think about other tasks, we have to work a little bit harder to get the benefit from them perceptually. So it is easier to go to the thing that we know will work every time to regulate our nervous system, and that is food. And even though we're more dysregulated after a lot of the time, during we have this moment of just floating and like, oh God, this food's so tasty. I should really stop, but it feels so good. And that's that sense of basically giving yourself like a big hug. Only what happens is the hug then lets go and the hug walks away and you start feeling a little bit sort of left to your own devices. So when it comes to creating a safety and a safety net and a signal of safety, this is where our nervous system is designed to survive. That's all. Okay, as women, this is why we have a reproductive age, and then we stop having our period and we begin to age a lot quicker. In most cases, unless you're enhanced, maybe. But with your reproductive age, the whole purpose is that you have a window of time where the goal is that you reproduce, so your bloodline continues. Then after that, God was just finished. He was like, okay, you've done your bit. Now it's time to be like the wise woman and pass on the guidance, but you've done your bit. You don't need to live forever. So that's why our hormones start to die down. It's like you passed on your bloodline. That's the end of what you need to do. So when it comes to our nervous system, it is designed for finding and seeking familiarity to complete that task. And if we are in a state of stress and in a state of sort of overwhelm, our nervous system will seek out, that was such a random tangent, will seek out familiarity through what it knows to create that safety net when we are feeling stressed. And so what do we know makes us feel good? That is food. And this is something really interesting that we need to think back. Our cells are very similar to the cells of our ancestors 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. Our cells are very similar. So with this sort of a thing, when our ancestors, when food was scarce, we downregulated a lot of our systems and we would search for food. Basically, we would go hunting, or not women, we'd technically be hanging back, chilling, making sure the kids are okay. But we would be searching for food. And in the period of having an empty tummy, we would be on higher alert because it's easier for predators to get us because we don't have as much energy. But after a feast, after we had caught the prey, cooked it or not cooked it and eaten it, and then our bellies were nice and full, it signaled a sense of safety. We're going to live again, like we're going to keep going. And this is where, if you look at yourself in this day and age, we have that same element of safety, that when we have a full tummy, we're like, oh, I'm safe, I'm going to live again. And then we come to and we're like, I've had a full tummy all day. Like, I've been safe all day. But this period of emotional uncertainty or emotional overwhelm pushed me to the point where I felt like I was unsafe. And primitively, I was like, okay, what is the easiest way to feel safety in my body again and establish that familiarity and that security that I know that my nervous system knows what's going on? Eat. So this is where a full belly triggers parasympathetic activation. Think of a food coma, think of chill. It promotes rest and recovery. So this biological response ensures that our bodies prioritize energy security for optimal functioning and well-being. Now, when it comes to ancient stresses, you can think of the fact that, again, we're running away from a lion. We're on high alert. If we haven't just eaten, then we have that period of time where we're like, we're on high alert. We want to catch something. We don't want to be running from as much if we don't need to. But these lions trigger survival responses. Today, those lions are emails. Those lions are work stresses. But those daily stresses that we may encounter, they still activate the same biological stress wiring without the physical danger actually being there. So think work pressures, relationship conflicts. These can create emotional threats that are perceived as real physical threats. So it provokes that biological stress response, similar to actually facing a life-threatening situation. So for us, we need to be able to remind ourselves that safety is, and again, the conversation where we can be so critical to ourselves because of a lack of willpower or a lack of discipline or control, because we are in four walls, we have a roof, we have a full fridge. What's important is that creating a stable environment is fantastic, and we want to ensure that we have our basic physical needs met, but we need to understand that safety encompasses safety as a whole for our nervous system, which also means we have to understand our emotional safety is addressed as well. So true safety has emotional regulation, psychological stability, and involves feeling supported. So these help to foster a sense of predictability to help you feel safe enough in your daily life. And when we can establish these elements of stability in our life and we can be aware of them, we can acknowledge them, we can be grateful for them, that sense of predictability can help to keep our nervous system feeling in that familiar state that, hey, we are safe, we don't need to run from anything. So because we don't need to run from anything, we end up not feeling the need to quash any sort of a giant gaping hole of energy leaks. And we end up being able to create a lot more of a stable and secure relationship with nutrition. Now, when it comes to depletion, this is where oftentimes the longer the famine would go on with our ancestors, the more desperate we started to become for food. So the first few hours after you eat, you're in primitive times, okay? You're in the Sahara. The first few hours after you've eaten, you're like, whoa, that was good. We ate, like we did it. And you're feeling quite good, feeling quite chill. But now, fast forward, it's been about 2 or 3 days since you last ate. Now you're starting to get irritable if you weren't already. Now you're like, okay, we've got to find that food now. We've got to fucking find it. So with this sort of a thing, this is where oftentimes with women who are in busy working environments, we tend to push. We will eat when we're done. We will rest when we're done. And the element of that feeds into something called low energy availability or chronic undereating. This leads to the biological response that intensifies the urge to binge. So basically, when the body lacks sufficient energy, it triggers the survival instincts that override that conscious control. So chronic undereating is not just having less food overall, and you can tell someone who's not eating enough food, but chronic undereating can also be in the same category and group as inconsistent nourishment. So the most common thing I see with my business women and my mums is that they're still getting in around 1,800 to 2,500 calories most days. However, it is the inconsistency where it's random foods here or there, it's grazing on something that was left out, it's grazing on what kids didn't finish, or again, it's starving, running off fumes and coffee, and then getting to a point where it's like, fuck, I really need to eat, and having something so metabolically not sound for your gut health and for your blood sugar and your goals, and you're like a milkshake and a burger after not eating for so long, and you're like, oh, I feel amazing. So inconsistent nourishment falls under the same bracket as chronic undereating because it creates fluctuations in energy levels, which causes the body to react by seeking those quick sources of fuel. And so this cycle can lead to an urgent need to binge eat, and then you feel good, you don't need to eat, you're running on fumes, you're running on adrenaline, go, 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 and then you're like, I gotta sit down, I gotta eat. So what we want to remember is that depletion, when we are binge eating, we often say, okay, I'm going to be better. Okay, I'm going to stop doing this. And that's because we've just filled up, we've just done the binge side of the binge and restrict cycle. And then we're like, I'm hard ass restricting. I'm throwing everything out of the house. I'm only eating my meal prep. I'm only doing this. And then we just feed into that same cycle. So we need to remember that with restriction, we have a restriction and an overconsumption cycle. So what happens is we go through our days and our body is underfueled. This triggers the survival response, which leads to the increased cravings and the urge to binge as the mind battles the restrictive thoughts. Over time, the more that we are consistently underfueling, inconsistently nourishing ourselves, and with sort of subpar nourishment too, the more that we end up also from a deeper biological level and deeper cellular level, the more we end up having our blood sugar go awry. So we have a little bit of food and it has a little bit of carbs, and our pancreas is used to having such an influx of carbs because you starve yourself all day, then you have a fat meal at 3 p.m. that it dumps out a bucket ton of insulin. And so that bucket ton of insulin then causes you to eat and then feel that so exhausted about 90 minutes after you eat. Okay, so with this sort of thing, then when you have a meal that is quite high in sugars, carbohydrates, for example, your body is then trying to work out how much insulin do I need to dump out. Let's aim to dump out more rather than less in a lot of cases. And that ends up feeding into, we're unable to utilize the glucose in our blood properly and have it go to the lean tissue properly. That we end up just eating, feeling food coma, then feeling hungry and irritable again. So we have this cycle where when we're trying to break out of the restrictive patterns and we're trying to stick to our meal plan, though, to a T, we often underfuel and then we overconsume. So overconsuming often follows the restriction, which results in that feeling of shame. So this cycle continues and it intertwines biology and psychology, which creates a challenging pattern and an identity that you then have to just practice more consistently to break through. And it becomes a lot more embedded in you, where you've got to call yourself out a lot more often when it comes to rewriting these thoughts and behaviors. So a lot of people say that when it comes to being a binge eater, they wear it on their shoulder, on their arm, and they go, I binged, that means I'm a broken human. So one thing is that with binging, you actually can eat enough. And the more that you do eat enough, the more that over time you'll be able to signal safety to the body, where you'll be able to then establish that relationship with food where it's not a matter of it's all right now and it's nothing later, but it's a matter of I can enjoy these little things here and there and actually not feel this insatiable urge where I can't control myself around particular foods. So when we consume enough calories, binge eating can still occur when we are emotionally dysregulated. So this is where personally I find for clients, similar to the life cycle of a red blood cell, but also the maturation of ovulation of an egg. So an egg to go from being a little follicle to being ovulated takes about 100 days. The life cycle of a red blood cell takes about 100 days. So what I like to say to my women who chronically binge and restrict is you actually need 100 days of consistently eating enough calories and enough food to help to, from a physical standpoint, rewire your brain to say, hey, there is enough food coming in. I can actually relax now. Usually we don't last 3 months. You barely last 3 fucking weeks before you take a diet again. And you're like, oh, I just didn't feel like eating today. Or I just did a big ass run. I did a big ass gym session and then I felt so exhausted. We need to create that calorie equilibrium for a long enough period of time to be able to see that physical change from the food that we're eating. So what often happens is that with binge eating, we start eating enough calories, and in this 12-week journey, we still find that we're binging. And we're like, but I'm eating enough. Why am I still unable to control myself around food? And this is often due to underlying emotional issues. So the body requires emotional safety as well as physical safety to actually create that cocoon of love and regulation within. So when emotional safety is absent, the body will continue to regulate through binge eating. So this is where, when it comes to addressing both the food issue and eating enough foods and eating enough of the right foods that help to replenish your nutrients, there's also the other side that we need to address, which is your identity, the way that you speak to yourself, the boundaries you set with yourself and other people, and addressing your true emotional needs, not just your nutritional ones, to actually allow that full healing to happen. Now, one thing that I like to go into is before the pantry, when you skip a meal, your body may trigger an intense urge to binge later. So nourishment itself is essential to maintaining balance and preventing overwhelming cravings. I have a really good example of what happens when you have a regulated relationship with both food and your blood sugar over a period of time where you have eaten enough food consistently, not overtrained your ass, and actually allowed your body to find equilibrium and regulate as a woman. And that is this weekend. I had a breakfast, which was just eggs, toast, and a little bit of avocado, I think. No veggies, no fiber, nothing crazy. It was just eggs, toast, and a little bit of avocado. And then that was at about 10 a.m. And it was about 5:30 p.m. when I had my next meal. And my partner had wanted to get ice cream. And I was like, I actually don't feel like ice cream. So it had been 6 hours. I was like, I really need some veggies and some meat. Like, I feel like I need some nutrients. And I had that. Then we went and had ice cream after. And then was absolutely fine. Didn't need to eat again. The cool thing is that when we have enough nourishment coming in, we can last the same amounts of time where before we were restricting and in these highly dysregulated states, we can now last that period of time, get on with our day a lot better, and also be able to, when it comes time to eat again or when it comes time to be quite hungry, we're not craving something that is sugary and fatty and just, I need to get the calories in me now, because the calories aren't in a state of depletion anymore, and our body down at the cellular level has regulated that. Instead, it's like, okay, I need some nourishment, I need some protein, I need some veggies, and that comes with an element of nutritional literacy as well. So having a bit of a system that you follow in the week with your nutrition, working with someone if you need to for a period of time, which a lot of our girls love their menus because of the way we write them. We write it based off of what you actually eat, not what sort of I think you should eat, but based off of what you like to eat, how you like to cook. And we got lazy girl meals. So for me, I love rice, frozen veg, and just beef mince for usually one meal of the day, every day of the week. Then everything else is pretty consistent. It's what you like to eat and it's what is genuinely nourishing. And then we sort of sprinkle in those extra foods here and there that help to really push the needle in terms of nutrients. But when it comes to nourishment, this is where it is essential to maintain that balance and prevent the overwhelming cravings that can happen when we move through our life every day through this state of depletion. So with this sort of a thing, we can see that there is a heightened urgency for food when we are more emotionally dysregulated for a lot of us as well. And this is where when we can recognize that feelings are not hunger and we can address them prior to reaching for food. Think of all the other little nodules that I spoke about at the beginning of this workshop. When we can address those little nodules first and we can create time and space between where the trigger and the craving is and where the food is eaten, that time and space is that connection strengthening to yourself and that communication back to yourself. When it comes to emotional stresses, the heightened state that we get into when we have a tense email, when we are dealing with stress with our partner, with our housemate, with our family, this creates an urgency for food because that urgency for that full tummy helps to allow us to actually create that safety again as quick as possible by pulling that big red lever. So it's important again when we can create space, just to clarify, between where the trigger and the craving is and where we eat the food. That space here is your regulation space. And if you can set a timer for 20 minutes and you can do any other regulation task between now and then be intentional about the food that you choose to eat, you can start to create a space where your new identity can step forward and step through, where you can be someone who doesn't rely on food as her sole means of regulation anymore. So when it comes to the life audit, this is where I want you to ask yourself, with an honest self-inquiry, I want you to start to understand your patterns, your triggers and needs without harsh judgment, allowing you to identify areas for growth or change. This is where, when it comes to your patterns, what often happens, okay, is it the stressful email and then you go straight to the kitchen? I know for me, I have a habit of as soon as I get home, I used to have this habit where I would first go straight to the fridge and I would just pick at something before I even went to the bathroom. I could have needed to wee for ages, and I'll be like, oh, I'll just have a little snack. And then I'll be in the kitchen for a long time, still needing to go to the bathroom. But I'll be like, let's just have something else. It opens a window because I'm dysregulated and I'm in a rush. So I know that when I am rushing, I need to slow it down 10%. I need to take a breath. And I'm able to remind myself in that time and space, in that gap, I'm able to remind myself that, hey, we need to regulate. What do you need? And I will ask myself this. I will be like, what do you need right now to actually bring you that safety again? Because right now, this dysregulation, she's seeking safety. And what do you need for that? Sometimes it's a hug. Usually it's lying down with my eyes shut for 5 to 10 minutes and just going, wow, I'm really stressed. Let's move this through our body. Sometimes it's a song that I listen to and then I get back into a good space and I carry on with the next task. But it's that time and that space where the urgency to eat and eating, that opens the window for a binge to happen. Whereas if we can start to create time and space between that urgency and say, hey, what do I need to feel safe? If it's been more than 2 or 3 hours, my last meal wasn't substantial, am I genuinely hungry? It's like, cool, well, we're genuinely hungry. Let's have a meal instead of trying to push our food out, okay? Then, of course, I want you to seek through this self-inquiry clarity. And so that means fostering awareness rather than trying to make different rules. I want you to illuminate your path to healing rather than to sort of just fall into a self-critical energy of, I can't believe I do this and I'm so weak because I do this. I want you to instead look at where the patterns are, look at where the triggers are, and then let's try to find the need for safety that's not being met and meet that first. So a little healing checklist. I want you going into this week to ask yourself, and I want you to write this down in your notes, write this down on your calendar as a daily reminder for the end of the day to check in with you and see how you went. And I want you to make sure that you're getting consistent nourishment. So ensure you're consistently eating enough throughout the day and the week to support your body. You're getting adequate sleep because this wreaks havoc on our blood sugar, our cravings, our irritability, our anxiety, everything. Prioritize sleep that's both adequate and restorative for optimal recovery and balance. Self-labeling. Stop calling yourself a binge eater. Foster something with a more compassionate identity. I'm healing. I'm healing every day. Every day I'm getting a little bit better. I'm recovering every day. I'm getting to know myself a little better every day. That's what I tell myself personally. When it comes to the things that I see where I need improvements, that's where instead of saying I'm a failure, which don't get me wrong, the thought still comes, but that first thought doesn't have to be your final thought. And so that second thought is actually, I'm getting better at understanding myself every day. I'm going through this now so that in the future, I have a deeper understanding of what I actually need in these points in time. Predictable meals, okay? Eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner around the same time. Leave around 3 or 4 hours between those and make sure they're substantial enough that over the course of the next few hours, you're genuinely not hungry. If you don't know how to make them substantial enough, DM me and I will help you, okay? Structure in your meals creates a sense of predictability and security in eating. It is a tale of mechanical eating. And this is something when you're recovering from bodybuilding prep or you're recovering from some restriction with your eating, is mechanical eating where you are eating even though you're not really hungry can be quite nice because oftentimes the binge and restrict cycle happens because you're not hungry. So you get on about your day. When cortisol is mobilized and we're in a bit more of a stress state, it down regulates our hunger hormones. So we can go, and we're not thinking about food. But then as cortisol starts to come back down again, all of a sudden the food starts to go back up. Or in order for us to bring our cortisol down, we know we need to eat. So we want to create that security in eating where we're eating at consistent times and in consistent amounts. And then identify your threats. Identify where there are leaks in your boat. Okay, recognize where the emotional threats may exist in your daily life and address them. Food, oh my God. Food can be a comforting source of nourishment. It can definitely be something that nourishes your ojas, but it is essential to recognize that it's not always the solution and it shouldn't be the only solution you have to meeting your emotional needs. And connection with others is something so undervalued. In a tribe, if you were not in your tribe and you were ostracized from your tribe, you were removed, okay, you would lose that emotional safety of the group. So reaching out for support, reaching out to your coach or reaching out to someone, reach out to me. Okay, this can help to meet the underlying needs that food doesn't actually fulfill and food will never fulfill, and you can keep eating and you'll never fucking fulfill it, to reinforce that sense of belonging and stability within your life. So with the power of compassion, I want you to remind yourself with shame's impact. Shame keeps the body in a constant state of threat. So when a binge happens, it's important to meet yourself and ask, what safety need needs to be met? Why was I feeling triggered? what happened in this moment? Was I feeling overstimulated? Was I feeling understimulated and bored? Where did I need to give myself a little bit of safety and kindness instead of saying, I fucked up, I'm the worst, I just can't control myself, I'm so fat, I'm so stupid. Instead, say, I was dysregulated in this moment. How come? What needs to shift in my life for me to love myself enough to change this situation so I don't have to go through it as much, or to expand the capacity of my nervous system to handle this little bit of stress resilience? Do I need to eat, and do I need to do some breath work before going through XYZ task? Compassion with yourself helps to lower cortisol, and so it's important with you, with your friends, with your clients. Creating an emotional safety that fosters healing can start from your inner environment too. It provides the necessary space to process emotions and help break the cycle of binge eating. So with this, I want you to think about going into this week regulation over restriction. With predictable meals, I want you to think about establishing, again, a routine. You're eating every few hours. You're eating breakfast within an hour or two, like within an hour of the same window, same with lunch and dinner. Reducing that uncertainty that our nervous system freaks out with, and promoting that sense of safety that can help to mitigate the binge urges effectively. And then making sure you're eating enough, okay? If you are depleted, it doesn't matter how many low-calorie foods you eat or how many foods you eat to hit your macros. If you're not hitting your macros, you are going to struggle to stop filling that void, because your body is seeking out anything to get those micronutrients, and you are just feeding it random shit that's low calories. So you're going to keep eating more, or you're going to keep being dysregulated and, again, filling that unfillable void. We need to be consuming enough, and we need to be consuming what we can in a parasympathetic state, so a relaxed state, so your body can register that it has the energy it needs and prevent those feelings of deprivation that trigger the binge eating too. So with this, your body is not the enemy, and your body is not self-sabotaging you. It's a natural protector to keep you alive. And so it's just perceiving threats, and you don't have to say, stupid body, it's an email. Instead, you can say, hey body, it's just an email. So what do you need right now that can help me to regulate? And then look at this email again. How big of a deal is it? Like, really, you could get an accommodation for 10 Australian dollars a day in the Philippines and live on an island for the rest of your life if you really want to. How big of a deal is it that this email and this deadline on this email really is to your emotional well-being? If you have kids, you obviously have to look after them too, but same sort of a thing. How much pressure are you placing on yourself because you're in a high pressure role where you have responsibility and you have people waiting on you? How much additional pressure are you placing on yourself that actually you can say, you know what, this is in my pay grade, but when I meet this from a dysregulated place, I produce shittier work. And if I can meet this from a regulated place and I can give myself 2 minutes of my time and then come back to this, or the moment this is done, I can give myself 5 to 10 minutes of my time to reground myself, when can I start doing that and implementing that? So remember, your body is your ally, okay? So when you support a positive relationship that encourages the healing and encourages that positive change, you end up feeding into those healthier behaviors and improved well-being as well. So with this, I want you to embrace flexibility when it comes to your healing journey, because it's not about perfection. It's about embracing nourishment and identity. Allow yourself to evolve and to redefine your relationship with food and with yourself, and find that safety within yourself and within others. Create an environment that prioritizes predictability for the most part in your food and in your nourishment, to nurture your mental well-being so that you can have a supportive environment, again, that starts from the inside and just glows out. If you have any questions, please message me on Instagram. For any clients watching this, send me a message on WhatsApp once you watch this. I hope this creates a little bit of clarity and a little bit of a bridge between where you may be now and where you can get to with a little bit of understanding, compassion, and regulation, and mechanical eating, freedom feeding. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And if you enjoyed this, please let me know. It makes all the difference. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.